Hi, I'm Andrew Spieler,
And I'm Mary Hope Rennie.
and you're watching or listening to Behind the Sign, real stories from real estate. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome back to episode 22.
I can't believe we've done 22. And it feels like 22 episodes, too. We've done a lot.
Yeah, that's.
When did we start this?
We started filming in November, I
There
think.
we go. So we're in a
Right?
whole different year. So
Yeah, so it's been 6 months.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Okay, well,
Before we start this episode,
yes.
for you, listening to all these agents and partners, what do you think has been the biggest aha for you, or hearing it or
You know,
observing?
I can't say that there's been any big like, oh my gosh, aha.
Yeah.
Which sounds silly, but honestly, it's been more reaffirming for me of my interpretation of what will make your career successful in this industry as well as other industries, right? I just think that, any industry when you're inside of it, it's like you go to conferences about this industry, you do this, and like all your narrow focus and tunnel vision on like whatever industry you're in.
Right.
But you don't realize like there's more similarities between industries than there are differences, and to know that like you can capitalize on whatever were your strengths from either what you did prior or if you're a dual career agent
Right.
and transferring it over into real estate, I think that should be that's my biggest aha. That's anybody can do this coming from any walk of life.
Yep.
And it's just how you sort of adapt to the position.
Well, and I do think the same thing. Every guest we've had have come from such different perspectives, and I think so many people think an agent here is the avatar of
Yes. Yeah,
an
when you think
agent.
agent, you see this, right?
Right.
But then you get in here and you realize it's a whole rainbow of different people and personality types. And that's what makes the fact that there is some one agent for every one client out there and no two are the same.
Well, and I think back to kind of actually what we wanted to talk about today is that we're running businesses of our own, which is wonderful. And I think it's the beauty of this business can be so personal. Well,
Mhm.
personal, yet it's what gets us stuck
Yeah.
because we get in our own way.
Hmm.
And
And we get in our own head.
we get in our own head. If you're working for another person and they're telling you what to do, you don't question a lot of this. But when you go through peaks and valleys, as we were saying, which real estate is in and of itself, the business itself has seasons.
Especially in our area,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
There's different times, even as a brokerage with over 400 agents, there are certain months that bring in more revenue than other months. And it's every year it's the same. So it's hard, especially coming from so many people come into this industry coming from a job
Yeah.
where they were paid a certain amount every day
Hmm.
or every week, every month,
Yeah.
a paycheck, and then coming to, oh my goodness, some months I'm going to have a lot, some I'm not going to. And I think we as agents interpret that as I'm stuck or I'm in a rut.
Right.
And so that's how we thought we would have a conversation about what should we do if we feel that way,
Yeah.
and what is it?
Yeah.
And,
So I think sort of identifying like what's a slump, what's a hump, right? What's the peak, what's the valley?
yeah,
And how do you know where you are? Are you on the incline or the decline? And trying to eradicate the sort of wild nature of high highs and low lows because I've been privy to other industries where same thing. It's like 1 minute you're riding high for 6 months and like you're at the top of your game, and then the next year you're not. And how do you deal with that from a mental standpoint, as well just from a fiscal business operations standpoint?
right.
And how to better systematize yourself so that the highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low, and there's a more
Yeah.
consistent through line, if you
Yeah.
will. So a couple of topics here,
Yeah.
right? I like this one. This is simplification versus overwhelm.
Mm.
So, what would you say agents try to do maybe too much of? And how can they maybe make it easier on themselves by coming up with a simplified solution, right? How do you kind of do less so that you're not overworking or overstraining or overburdening yourself?
That's a good question because I think that has a lot of different elements to it, simplifying. One of those things is also we're talking about experienced versus new agents. So, experienced agents, there's data there. And when I say simplify, look at the data, which we're going to also talk about looking at the data, and see what's worked.
Mhm.
And I think what happens when we get into these slumps, I don't even want to call it a slump,
Mhm.
a shift, a shift in our activity,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we might not have 5 closings this month, but we have 5 under contract that are going to close next month. So
Right.
what we're feeling is there's not a paycheck coming.
Mhm.
That's when we think there's a slump.
Mm.
Yet we always say, but I've been working so hard.
Mhm.
And our industry, we get paid after the fact.
Right.
So really being okay, doing what we do best, focus on that. And the minute there's a slowdown, not run in different ways.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think as soon as you start
Yeah.
feeling a sense of fear, right? Fear will motivate you to start doing things kind of erratically.
Yeah.
And, in the most instant form of it, it's you running around like a chicken with your head cut off, right? We all know that term.
Yep.
When you're an agent and you feel like something's not working, you start kind of going out and being like, oh, I should have been doing more of this, or oh, I should have been doing more of
All
that.
the
And
shiny
I
objects.
should try this because this just came online, or oh, I just saw somebody do this over here, and I'm failing if I'm not doing what they're doing because they look like they're having success.
Yes.
So you get quickly wrapped up in all these like what if scenario and possibilities versus maybe sitting down, right, and looking at it and being like, yeah, I might feel like I'm doing less than, but last month was the highest month I've had in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a misnomer,
Well,
right?
I think when we say these peaks and valleys and all of that, I think most of the time we're talking about what we're feeling,
Hmm.
not the reality.
Right. Yeah.
And agents are running their own business,
Hmm.
yet we don't treat it like a business.
Right.
A business has a P&L every month,
Hmm.
a profit and loss statement.
Yeah.
They're looking at what they've spent, what they took in. They're looking at it compared to last year. These are things that are automatically in other businesses, and I am telling you, 90% of agents are not looking at their year over year.
Sure.
We call it multi-year trends, looking at what we did last year and the year before and where we're at. And I think in and of itself, I don't want to say taking away the emotions because emotions are important,
Hmm.
yet looking at the facts
Yeah.
will take away, I would dare to say, at least 75% of the angst
Yeah.
of those lows.
Yeah.
I remember the first time, it's not the first time, but the one time I reached out to my mentor and said, I'm in a slump. You need to help me. What's going on? This mentor was wise enough when I met with them to have already printed out my numbers from the last 5 years.
Hmm.
I didn't think about doing that.
Yeah.
I said, I'm doing something wrong. I remember it so clearly. I was sitting in the office around the corner. We were in a conference room. I'm doing something wrong. I didn't have any closings this month.
Yeah.
I feel slow. What am I doing? And we looked at the multi-year trends, and I was literally, I think, $1,000 off. This was 3 or 4 months in
Yeah.
from the last 2 to 3 years. And every single month, every single year, I at least had 1 month I had not closed anything. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I literally,
Hmm.
we're so in our business that we can't see outside of our business.
Right.
And I think that's simplification because the minute we, numbers actually simplify things, facts simplify things,
Hmm.
they take out the emotion and look at it as a business.
Right.
I think that would take care of most agents' issues around slumps
Hmm.
because,
It reframes your mental state away from the emotional and more toward the
right, because
logical.
yes,
And-
well, it's kind of like when we were talking to a seller about what their house is worth. I just did a class on helping agents learning how to price homes. And although these are the biggest investments of their lives,
Mhm.
buyers' investments of their lives, Buyers are buying and making a decision in about 30 seconds as they walk into a home.
Right.
That's emotional.
Mhm.
They're not running the numbers
Yep.
until afterwards, and then they make the numbers work.
Yeah.
Sellers are emotionally selling their home usually,
Mhm.
meaning what it's worth is because of everything they've put into it.
Right, the personal value.
They've seen all the love and care they've put into it. So therefore, why doesn't everybody else see this?
Mhm.
Um, and it's so hard to sell or run a business successfully
Mhm.
if we just have emotion.
Right.
Emotion is always a part of it.
Mhm. And I think people get emotion and intuition
Mm,
misconstrued too.
yes.
It's like having a gut feeling about a move you should make in your business or with a client or whatever. Yeah, that's there. But I do think that people tend to, I was the same way. Like last year, I was working my tail off, 60, 80 hour weeks. And at the end of the year, I just felt like I was like, I don't
What
even,
do I have to
I,
show
I
for
was
it?
like, I'm doing nothing. My bookkeeper was like, you're crushing it. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, you're doing great. And I was like,
I don't feel it.
yeah, I was like, well,
You really
yeah,
believe that you did,
of course. Yeah.
but
Okay.
you did better last year than the year before, right?
Um,
Or at least the
yeah,
same.
yes. Yeah. Yeah, I did. But
You
I
sh-
was working so much and I was so busy that I didn't have the time to like actually look and see like how I actually have been doing.
Yep.
So I was just going, going, going. And it took, me like just having a vulnerable moment with my bookkeeper being like, how am I doing? Like I'm assuming my cost and expenses are through the roof and I'm not bringing enough in the revenue and yada yada. And she was like, no, you're right in the pocket. And I'm like, okay, well that's comforting, but I wish everybody kind of had
But
some.
you also had your bookkeeper to look at it.
Right.
How many agents
You're right.
are bringing in checks
Mm-hmm.
and not putting that anywhere? There's just so much, and it's understandable. We're all coming into this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, having no idea how to run a business.
Right. Yeah.
Most of us. I
Mhm.
do feel that those who take it as a business will de facto be more successful
Mhm.
because what they're doing is if there is a slowdown, if they're watching their numbers and they can see down to how many calls they've made, how many appointments, they're going to know where they're missing things. And that's where I feel like the first thing when you feel like you're in a slump, do you have someone in your corner
Right.
that you trust,
Mhm.
that you can sit down with and they can ask these hard questions of you?
Yeah.
You usually can't see this objectively for yourself. I remember when I sold my home, I needed another agent to come in and see my home.
Of course.
Same
Yeah.
thing with our business. Our business is our baby.
Yeah.
And
And when you are your business, you are wrapped up in it in this inexplicable link that is very hard to disassociate from and
yeah,
actually get qualified perspective on.
yes,
So,
yes. Oh, you
um,
definitely need someone to be there to look at your business objectively.
okay, so here's another sort of subcategory, right,
Yeah.
for feeling burnout. Um, when you feel overwhelmed or you feel like you're in a slump, what do you do to sort of reconnect with your why, right? Last
Mm-hmm.
week when we had Chantel on, she talked a little bit about like she hit a point where she was like, I should quit. Right. So when you feel that
Mm-hmm.
urge to kind of give up because you're overwhelmed or you're underperforming or whatever, what are some of those things that you can do to sort of reevaluate your motivation to kind of refuel the flames, if you will?
Well, it's interesting because if you remember with Chantel, she was burnt out from putting the
Pedal
pedal to metal
and screaming.
and not stopping.
Mhm.
And hers wasn't even a slump of, "Ooh, I don't have anything going on." It was almost like, "What am I doing? This is hard work."
Mhm.
And having to kind of regroup again and you slow down and you pick up. Um, however, what I've experienced is you need to always be reevaluating why you're doing it.
Mhm.
The reason is, and that's kind of just in your head, oh, why? However, so many times we just say, oh, to make money.
Right. But to what end?
Yes.
Right.
Well, but what is that money going to do for you
Mhm.
is the biggest question. A lot of times that can change too. And I do know for myself, at the beginning, it was my why of getting into real estate changed dramatically.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes when we get into those slumps, we forget why we got into the business. At the beginning, we so many people said, "I've always wanted to try it out.
Mhm.
I really like houses.
Right.
Um, I kind of didn't like my job still. I wanted to get out of my job. I want flexibility."
Mhm.
Those are all great things. That's not a way that you can stay in the business.
It sounds to me like a rebound relationship
You're
situation,
right.
right? You're like, "Oh, I just broke up with my boyfriend, girlfriend, and they did all these things, so I wanna go do something that does the opposite of those things for a little
Yes.
while." And then you realize, like, either it's a better fit or you were just doing that out of emotion again, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And once you realize the potential of real estate and what it can do for your life, you do need to reevaluate. Because if you do put the work into real estate, you can become very successful and you can make a lot of money in real estate.
Mhm.
So if you've done that, and this is again, I think I'm not a psychologist. We hit ceilings in our life that great, and now what?
Right.
Great, and now what? We get bored.
Mhm.
We get bored so easily. And so when you're working for yourself, you hit these and it feels like a slump. It feels like it's burnout. It's all of those things. So you have to go back to why are we doing this? Are you showing up just to show up? If you are, it's not going to last very long.
Mhm.
But if you have a goal or a reason why you're doing it, and that can be a whole nother, I mean, there's books about your why.
Right. Mhm.
um,
Start with why.
Start with why.
Yeah.
I just actually finished that book.
Mhm.
And then what's the one? There's another one right after it, something
Yep.
with your why. Um, if you don't know why you're doing something, you better slow down, stop, and reevaluate
Mhm.
because this business is hard.
Mhm.
It's not It's not pretty fun all the time.
Mhm.
I get to go see houses. If you don't have a strong enough why as to doing this, every time it gets hard, you're going to push
Now
back
question it.
and you're going to question it. You're not going to treat your clients right.
Mhm.
You're not going to treat other agents right.
Right.
You're not going to treat yourself right
Mhm.
because unless it's worth the hard,
Yeah.
you are going to go back into your cocoon.
Mhm.
And I think also knowing your why. Usually your why is not to just make a lot of money.
Right.
I hope not.
Yeah. That's a very shallow why.
Well, making a lot of money, why? Even if
Right.
it's a lot of money.
Mhm.
Why am I doing this? Is this for my family? Is it for to better myself? Is it for charitable purposes? Bigger whys? Is it to give back to others? Um, if you have something that your money is going to change your life in a way that you can help others, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. It changes and you're able to get over those hurdles, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to work some days when you don't feel like it.
Mhm.
We're sitting in here and it's 80 degrees outside.
Oh, yeah. I know. I've been in a cave all day.
Yeah, I know. And here, I also know though that part of my why is to help agents get out of those slumps. That's literally part of my job is a
Mhm.
growth leader, which a growth leader is helping someone go from here to here.
Mhm.
And that really is my mission. And I feel so strongly that I can help others because I am seeing from a little bit of out of perspective from them.
Yeah.
Um, but it's when they're in the ruts, why and how do we get out of it?
Mhm.
And because of that, this makes all of this that we're doing, all of the work we're putting into this brokerage, because I so strongly believe we can change people's lives if they understand what
Mhm.
they're capable of.
Mhm.
I truly believe gosh, we could go on to a whole nother tangent. Most people, most agents do not understand what they're capable of.
Mhm.
And I would say half the reason people don't succeed is they don't believe they're capable of it and they're not worthy of it,
Mhm. Yep.
to be honest. And they haven't seen big enough what this could do for them.
Mhm.
And to help agents break through those mind blocks,
Yeah.
barriers,
Mhm.
and see, okay, if I just do this, I could change my life. I remember talking about mindset. I've said this to so many agents. I might have even said it on a podcast. If I give you $100,000 and I said, all you need to do is you have to come in from 9 to 3, just 9 to 3,
6 hour day, not bad.
6 hour day. I'll give
Yeah.
you a lunch hour even. I'll give you $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to call every person you know.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the script.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you the script,
Yeah.
and you need to make appointments for me to go to
Mm-hmm.
2 a day, and I'll give you $100,000, and you only have to work 4 days a week. I have asked people that, and they're like, "I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I should have, I should hire those people to work for me
Sure. Yeah.
and set up appointments to do listing because, but that's all this job requires.
Mm-hmm.
It actually requires a lot less,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's the consistency of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not willing to do it for ourselves.
Right.
Those same agents aren't willing to do.
Well, that also comes down to fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of
But if I told you I was going to pay you $100,000 to make those calls, in even if people said no,
right. But that's me doing it for you,
yeah,
right? That takes the onus off of
mhm,
me putting myself out there
right,
on my behalf versus somebody else calling on my
yeah,
behalf. And so you're sort of diluting the emotional stakes
yeah,
and weight of the process,
yes,
which that's leverage, right? That's working with a team, that's
absolutely.
delegating so that you can actually.
But do you see how that doesn't has nothing to do with your ability?
Sure. Yeah.
Your ability, anybody can make a phone call
Yeah. Everyone knows how to dial a number on the phone,
and
hang up
talk.
and talk, right? But you're right. It's
It's not.
people just get in their own head over,
Yes.
well, I'm going to do something that's going to leave an impression on somebody that may not be favorable for me now or in the future. And so the what if of if I mess this up
Yep.
stops them from even starting.
Well, and I think with that, we're not clear what it takes to make a certain amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if I said, and everybody says, "What do you want to make?" $100,000, which is great. It's a great salary,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that there's a lot of people who make a lot more than $100,000. And if you did 9 to 3, I think you'd be making a lot more. If
Yeah.
you really made those phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
holy cow! Um,
Actually, I got to go. I got to go make calls.
yeah. I was like, "What? You gotta go." You're like, "Oh shoot, I probably should be doing that." Um, but so much of it is that we're not willing to hold ourselves to the expectations that if someone else asked us to do it, we would do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we're not willing to hold ourselves to those same standards,
Right.
which again, it goes back to we're running our own business.
Mm-hmm.
We're usually the one in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we
We're
are our biggest barrier to entry in many ways, shapes, and forms. I mean, it's the same thing getting on camera here, right?
absolutely.
You know, how many people come through the door with the best of intentions
Yep.
and then they get in here and then they have trouble
Yep.
because they suddenly see how they look or they hear how they sound and it's an automatic turn off to them. So they assume it's going to be an automatic turn off to anybody else who sees them or the video. And so they stop.
Yep.
Right. And I mean, obviously, these are all sort of just human emotional barriers that I think, are true again in any industry that's where the onus is on yourself, not necessarily a corporate
Right.
job. But that's why there are so many people in corporate jobs because you don't have to worry about it. It alleviates you of any of the sort of self deconstructive mentality that you can
Yeah.
find yourself in pretty quickly
Yeah.
when you're an entrepreneur. And being an agent is an entrepreneur on steroids because it's not like
Yes.
you're running a business making some new product. You are an entrepreneur selling yourself as a service.
Yep.
And that's
You're
a
selling yourself.
yeah, and that's a very hard thing for a lot of people to just be okay with
You-
if they don't have 100% confidence in their abilities, which is a fallacy. You can't reach 100% confidence in your ability
No.
because if you did, I don't know, you'd be an Olympian or something, right?
Well, I was. That's so true. And no matter how many years I've been in the business, 16 years, I was doing teaching how to price a house.
Yeah.
And I'm showing it and I'm making mistakes left and right, and agents are correcting me. And my way is not the only way. Like,
Mhm.
that's the reality. Growth is part of nature. And
Mhm.
again, we talk a lot about it. We talk about mindset. We talk about all of that. The reality is that we will stop ourselves from doing things that we are capable of doing. We will stop ourselves from having what we really, really desire because we are not willing to put ourselves out there in a way, first of all, to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
Second of all, to learn from others.
Yeah.
And third of all, to put in the work.
Yeah.
And it's just such a weird, strange thing that we're willing to do it for others, but we're not willing to do it for ourselves. And I really do feel that that is probably the biggest sticking point.
Mhm.
And also, um, the value of surrounding yourselves with people
Mhm.
that you trust, that you know have your best interest. I guess that goes right in with trust and that know this business.
Mhm.
So many agents think it's so important to learn this business and how to write a contract and PNS, and people joke about that. Like Keller Williams is great about teaching all new agents. Holy cow, no, anybody can learn that.
Right.
I mean, to an extent, right? Like, give them a system, people can learn real estate. But what happens to agents is they get their feet wet and, ooh, contracts are coming in, I'm getting busy. And they forget to slow down and seek advice and get guidance and be mentored and be coached
Mhm.
um, throughout the process. And so what happens is they keep on going in the same cycle. They're not going to get out. Let's just say they're a 7 unit agent. They're an agent, that they just naturally can do that
Mhm.
with a little help. If something gets bumpy, they reach out to their broker or someone. However, they're never going to be able to get out of that unless they reach out to someone. Go take the training to make themselves uncomfortable and train. And it's the people around you and the systems around you.
Mhm.
And that's why I said I never leave Keller Williams as an agent because we have systems here that gets you over those humps.
Mhm.
Somebody else that did it and it works.
Mhm.
And people that actually care about me
Yeah.
that are willing to tell me the hard truth like, Mary Hope, look at last year.
Mhm.
You closed nothing in February. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
That took the time to run the numbers for me because I wasn't even willing to do it.
Well, what I find interesting is, because we were trying to kind of come up with notes of like, okay, what are the things that you can do when you're in a slump
Yeah.
and everything. I think at the end of the day, like all the information we have here is valuable to a degree, but
Yes.
the most important thing you can do when you think you're in a slump, right? Now, when you're in a slump, maybe you are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is to find others
Mm.
to help you either identify whether or not you're in the slump or not to begin with. And if you are, bring in support systems to help buoy you out of the slump, right? And all of that just comes down to people and relationships and trust and being willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm having a spot of difficulty right now,
That's a nice way.
right?
Spot
A
of
spot of difficulty. How could you help me and what does that look like for me reciprocating for you, right?
yes.
Which I mean kind of ties back into last week's episode, right? Chantel, new agent.
Yeah.
She knew she was going to go to people who knew more better than she did at the
She
outset.
was humble enough to say,
To say, "Hey, can you teach me what I'm doing wrong here? Show me what I should be doing versus what I've been doing," right?
yeah.
And that's a certain mindset that you got to be able to get into, and it allows you to stay adaptable and
Yeah.
fluid and buoy past some of the deeper dips that you can have over the course of a career.
Well, and along with this, and I think we've kind of skirted around it and we've been talking about people, which is, I think, the most important thing. Accountability
Hmm. Through others.
through others.
Yeah.
We can't be accountable to ourselves. We can to an extent.
Mhm.
There are some people who are so disciplined
Yeah. And they might be really disciplined in one aspect of
and
something,
not disciplined in the other.
but not in the other, right?
But
Yeah.
accountability automatically makes us such a better person
Mhm.
makes us better at what we do.
Mhm.
The very fact that daily our agents are being held accountable if they want, it's all daily to habits that are going to help their business and call it out daily at 8:30 to 9. We have a morning mindset. Part of morning mindset is being held accountable, and we are calling out what our goals are and being held accountable. Those people who do that and who are humble enough to ask for help and accountability will be more successful, guaranteed without a doubt.
Mhm.
That will be proven. The minute we think we can do it on our own, the minute we think we're the agent that we are
Mhm.
and we have the knowledge we need, we can do this on our own, is the minute we not only kind of slow down, we usually go backwards
Mhm. Sure. When you get comfortable.
when you get comfortable.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So, moral of the story for the episode is don't get comfortable,
don't get
right?
comfortable
Stay hungry and learn through others and grow with and through others.
and talk to those you trust
Hmm.
and let them hold you accountable
Yeah.
to to your why.
Hmm.
But you have to tell them why you're doing this
Right.
so they can remind you about that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's some pretty golden advice for episode 22. And I think we should also acknowledge our black and white
pretty impressive.
large mugs.
Yes, cheers
Cheers to
to episode
22.
22. I don't know why that.
I like that more than number 25, I guess. So,
Yeah, I guess.
yeah.
Oh, so
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this week. We hope to see you on the next one. Make sure you like, share, follow, and subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify. It helps us a lot to get more recognition, likes, and comments to get more visibility. So please do that. And please write to us if there's something you would like for us to chat about or if you'd like to be on the show.
or if you disagree with us, too, that'd be great
Yeah,
too.
please. Yes, we'd love to hear opposing viewpoints on anything. Yes. So
We'll bring you on as a guest.
that's right. Great.
Good.
All right.
Thanks,
you.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Thanks you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Sign, Real Stories from Real Estate.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained a little insight into the world behind those for sale signs.
Today's episode was brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan, proudly serving New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. A special thank you to our agents, leadership, and partners at KW Metro for their continued support.
And thanks to you, our amazing listeners and viewers. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Leave us a review or comment. We love hearing your feedback, and it helps more people discover the show.
And if you have a real estate story you'd like to share or a question you want answered on a future episode, reach out to us at metro.kw.com or find us on Instagram, handle at KWMetroNH.
Until next time, we'll see you
Behind the sign.